titled this presentation of mine as revalorizing the Porambok. Porambok is a very common Tamil word. It's now become a dirty word. It's become a curse word, which means useless or wasteland, worthless. And in fact, the story of the Porambok is not actually a story about useless and worthless things. It is exactly the opposite. It is probably the most valuable spaces on this planet. And in the Tamil revenue classification, medieval Tamil revenue classification, these have been classified as Porambok. What is this? Go down, and go down. Oh, good. So I thought I'd given the wrong presentation. Not your problem at all. I have the presentation anyway. So yeah, the word has moved. I mean, the word originally means Puram is outside and Pok is a register. Areas that fall outside the revenue register. That is one of the etymological roots that we think it is. I don't have a very clear fix on this, but these are areas that are not taxed because the land or the space is owned, communally owned and shared by different communities within a specific geographical area. So how did it become devalued to mean something that is worthless? The rules of Porambok are very simple. You cannot lay a floor, you cannot build a roof, and you cannot buy it or sell it, which essentially makes it useless for real estate. It is not property in the sense that it cannot be purchased or sold. And as a result, if you look at and it cannot be built upon. So basically everything that we consider as a modern civilization worthy is associated with construction, is associated with buildings. It's associated with closing open land with concrete, asphalt, cement or steel. And when you take that away, then it means that it is worthless for the people who believe that development essentially means closing land. And no matter where you go, you will find that the meaning of the word development doesn't really change much. The intentions of the development might be upliftment of society, well-being and prosperity and things like that. How will it come? By closing open land with concrete, asphalt, cement or steel. Tamil Nadu has the dubious distinction of being one of the most urbanized large states. I mean, there are smaller states like Goa and Kerala that are also highly urbanized, but Tamil Nadu is a very large state that is urbanized, and we are looking towards an urban population of close to 67%. If things go like this with no other interventions, and the other interventions could be interventions by nature that we cannot really forecast, and which might keep us from getting to the 67% urbanization, not target, but the kind of trajectory that we have predicted over here. Next, please. Water needs again continue to grow. We don't have a clear fix on what is the quantum of water that we use. We get a general sense of how much water we use by looking at the amount of sewage water we generate, because the more water we use, the more sewage we generate. And contrary to the popular notion that the poor and poverty is a cause for pollution, it is actually prosperity that causes pollution, because you need to have money to pollute a lot. And the more money you have, the more you pollute. And that is on a global level with the rich nations causing more damage, and at a local level with the richer people amongst us causing a disproportionately high amount of damage that is shared disproportionately by the poorer sections of society. Next, next. So this is the, I will move away from the mic. This is a map of Chennai. This presentation was after the Chennai floods. Of course, we've been talking about it for a long time, but after the Chennai floods, and thank God for that, because it gave us a moment to actually drive home a message about Chennai's vanishing wetlands. All the blue dots that you see are largely man-made or human-made water bodies. And that is because Chennai is flat, water doesn't like to stay here, it runs away, drained through those three long lines that you have, the three rivers, Karaya, Kuam and Adyar, and empties into the Bay of Bengal through these openings, which is the Ennore estuary, Kuam estuary and the Adyar estuary. We also have a fourth opening, which is the Kovalam estuary further south. And we have connecting all these things, the Buckingham Canal, which is an engineered water body as well. The irrigation tanks or AREs are very, very elegant engineering structures, and when I say elegant, I mean they're not the kind of engineering structures that we build now. which are it's a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of people running around. This is very simple. It is extremely lazy engineering. It uses the force of gravity, scoops out the earth from a particular hollow and builds a bund and retains water in the upgradient area. And using gravity again feeds the farmlands. And if the community grows larger, you can increase the length of the bund to a certain limit, and then of course move on to a different place, build a new tank, and settle a new area. So the preoccupation of the engineers of the yesteryears was to make water stay. The preoccupation of the engineers today is to make water leave. So we have a large number of water bodies. Next, please. And if you look at this is what I call, when we say that we are growing as a city, we are also losing something else. And growth essentially is a growth in built-up area. So if Chennai has grown, then the area of Chennai has remained the same pretty much. But the built-up area within Chennai has increased from 47 square kilometers to 402 square kilometers. And even while doing that, the area under wetland has come down from 186 square kilometers to 71 square kilometers. The problem which we face is that we are completely disconnected to our water source. Earlier, when we used to have a well and that was the only source of water, we know when we have a problem. Now we don't know when we have a problem because we can't even see the sump. And as long as there's water in the tap, like today I realized that the sump was empty. And for the last year, the sump was never empty. And so I used water like, everybody else just a lot. And all of a sudden I realized that the water was empty today. And then I realized that there was a ration. And that the tanks are dry. So next please. So we keep talking about encroachments as one of the key things. And when we talk about encroachments, immediately images of these hutments along on the banks of the river Kuam or hutments on the banks of the Korattur come up. These banks are all Porambok. And it is not, and the reason why people go there, it's a very dangerous place, a very problematic place to be, but it's not out of choice that people go there. These are the marginalized, which means they live in the margins of the roads, margins of the tanks, margins of the sea, margins of the canals, and margins of the rivers. And that's because the rest of the city, no matter how large the city is, does not have any room for them. So they're pushed to the margins and they stay there. These are seen as the encroachments because they do not have the money to bribe to get a license. They might have enough money to bribe a politician to give them the muscle power to stay there. But these encroachments are the only ones that the court targets. So after the 2015 floods, after the 2005 floods, the court immediately goes and said remove all encroachments. When they say remove all encroachments, they only mean remove the huts. They're not going to remove the big encroachments. Some of the big encroachments have received a license by bribing, by talking, by lobbying, by changing laws, and those violations, those natural violations will be tolerated because under human law, the license is all that matters, the location does not matter. Under the law of nature, the license does not matter. So if you build a Supreme Court inside a water body, then the water will come in. It is not going to stay out because out of respect for the lordships. So you have this, which is an encroachment. Those of you from, anybody recognize what this is?
Chennai one.
Chennai one. So I think you can give them that present. Chennai one, built in Pallikarnai marshland, and that is an encroachment because it's built inside the marshland. This is the kind of encroachment that we think about. These are survival encroachments. These are elite encroachments. This will not be disturbed. That will be disturbed. This is a threat to the city because it is huge and the strength of it does not these huts will be washed away by the force of water. Over here the water will be diverted and sent to other places where people might be harmed. Next please. Next please. So if you look at this, just a few slides and then I will finish it. This is the Pallikarnai marshland, about 50 square kilometers, and with drains an area of about 250 square kilometers on this side. And when we look at this, all Porambok, this is called Kadiveli Porambok, or floodplains. So where water comes, and these floodplains are very interesting because over here the water covers and gets high only for a few months of the year. The rest of the time you go, it's very unimpressive. But in those 3 months they show their magic, and the remaining 9 months they're resting. So it is for those 3 months that under the Porambok laws of the yesteryears, these places have to always, throughout the year, they have to remain free of any kind of permanent structures. So what did we do in our valuation? where we look at what is worthy and what is not. We decided that a piece of standing water is not really valuable. What is valuable in our scheme of things is IT corridor. So we say, Kadveli Paramboka ITR, we say IT corridor. So we carve out a 381 acre Sholingalur SEZ, and the smartest of minds, quote unquote, I don't know if they're really smart, they keep telling that they're very smart, end up working over there. Azim Premji's Wipro Foundation, Wipro Tech, all the big companies are housed within the Sholingalur SEZ. So not only did they harm the surrounding communities, they also put several thousand people at risk, because there are lots of workers inside those places, and the water climbed up to the second floor because it did not have a way to go out. This is the route it takes. And all that water will stand over here, take 4 to 5 months to drain out. It will take its own sweet time to drain out. And while it is residing over there, it provides ecosystem services, it recharges the groundwater, etc. Next please. This is Chembrambakam area, which is the villain of the 2015 floods. It was made the villain of the floods. It's a good area, or it is an area, it is an inanimate area. Did not mean to do any harm to anybody. This area is the upgradient, so the water flows from here. And with water, before it fills the lake, before it flows to the surface, it first has to soak into the ground. So if you have clay, less will go in, more will flow out. If you have sand, more will go in, less will flow out. If you have concrete, all will flow out. So after this land is soaked and completely filled with water, then the water starts running out. The advantage of that is when this water dries up, this is upgradient, so the groundwater starts filling up this place. So it's a very important thing to ensure that this area remains open to the sky. This large area remains open to the sky because this is essentially part of your lake. When we do lake conservation, we go around picking garbage from here. This is the place where the water actually comes from. You put poison over here, you get poison inside your water body. And here we replace all that open ground with concrete. We called it the Hyundai Irangattu-Kotai Special Economic Zone. This is the engine of India's development. And Chembrambakam delivers water to this part of the city. So we drink a little bit of Hyundai every day. This is the Velachery Lake in 1970. Wow. And if you notice, this area is densely populated, which is fantastic because water will come and enter over here, and in heavy rains, the place will get flooded for maybe 2 hours. You walk out and the water will drain out and go into the area. This is called Natham and Natham Porambok, which is where habitations are permitted. The only Porambok where you can build houses. There is one more Porambok where you can build a roof and a floor, and that's the burial ground. So this is in 2015 as we see. I think that this is probably not there anymore because we've been working on it in the last 3 years. Phoenix Mall is over here. And as you can see, this is the casualty of the IT boom. Next. So no, the one previous one. The previous. So if you look at this area, has remained empty for centuries. I don't know how old the Velachery Lake is. And this is a Meikal Porambok. Meikal Porambok is grazing land. This area has to be filled with water for at least a month. And because water comes with this good friend silt and fertilizes this area. Of course now we don't have water. When it rains we have sewage, and when it doesn't rain it is dry. So earlier there would be silt and water coming and staying over here. And this place is also supposed to remain empty because it is flood prone. But we filled it up and then built this thing called the MRTS, like a garland, to ensure that the water that comes over here and floods our homes does not get an exit. And it is often said after the 2015 floods that lack of infrastructure was one of the reasons behind the floods. It was infrastructure that caused the floods, because the infrastructure has been planned in such a manner that it does not respect the right of water to flow or the importance of water to stay. This is Adambakam area. This black spot is gone. I visited that 1 month ago, and it is now completely disappeared. This I don't know why they've left it. I don't really know. This should not be there. But next. This is Kodangayur area, and if you look at this, you'll find something very interesting. Straight lines. Straight lines means there have been engineers at work, which is already a sign of danger. Because if you look at that place, it's not only the fact that it was a planned layout, which means any smart engineer will first advise you not to build inside a water body. But they not only built it inside the water body, but they put a layout over there, and this is part of something called the ARI scheme, where we borrowed money from the World Bank. So we actually put our salaried engineers to work to draw straight lines and put houses inside a water body. And then we decided to go to World Bank and get money from them to do this. Next. Next. This is again, you can stay here. This is again, our coastline has sand dunes and sandy beaches, which are very important to keep the salt water from coming into the inland groundwater resources, because sand essentially is like a sponge for fresh water, and when the water goes down, it forms a lens or a wall that prevents or that tries to push the seawater out. And as you reduce the amount of sand, the fresh water goes inwards towards the land, and the seawater comes in and intrudes into your groundwater, rendering it unfit for most uses. So this sandy place, which is essentially a water factory, was destroyed to actually make a water factory, a desalination plant, a Nemili desalination plant. So this plant came up, and the minute you build something like this, you build a small jetty over here, as you see, it will start blocking the littoral flow, the flow of sand. So over here, if you go along the beach and you stand on the beach, you will find that sand particles stick to your feet. And that's because the inshore waters over here is essentially a river of sand that's moving northwards 9 months of the year and southwards for 3 months of the year during this season. Around about now, the direction will change and be influenced by the southwest monsoon, which means it will again start flowing from the south. So when I put a wall over here, all the sand gets trapped over here. This place is starved of sand, and you have erosion, which means your sea comes closer to the land, your groundwater gets salinized. So this desalination plant not only converts salt water into fresh water, it also converts fresh water into salt water. Next. So last few slides and I will stop. This is a story about Ennur, and Ennur is an unfortunate place because it is a meeting place for all of the Government of India's campaigns for the last 25 years. What is now called Make in India was already happening earlier. Sagarmala, Bharatmala, Beti Bachao, everything meets over here in Ennur. And it is the most unfortunate place because this place cannot take all these programs, because all of them essentially involve covering open spaces with concrete. Next. This is the Ennur Creek is the place where the Kosasthalaya drains into the Bay of Bengal. And if you notice all these installations, this is the backwaters. So the Ennur River, the Kosasthalaya River, in its peak floods, carries twice as much water as Adyar and Kuam combined. So it's a lot of water that goes out, and that water has to lead through this one small exit. And so it has made for itself a large area for the water to stay for 4 to 5 months. And those areas are called the Ennur Creek. Next. Next. Yeah. So our master planners, the Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority, decided to take about 2,000 acres of the Ennur Creek and designated it for locating hazardous industries for, even before the Make in India was coined, they decided to Make in India over there. And so 2,000 acres of wetlands have been set aside for chemical industries. And if you look at this, this is the Vallur Thermal Power Station. All this is part of the Attipattu Salt Works, a very famous salt works. And the Buckingham Canal, which runs over here, this stretch of the Buckingham Canal was built first, and it goes from Ennur to Central. These salt works are all inside the river, and that has been sacrificed for a power plant. This electricity is probably from there. This is a power plant, this is a coal yard, and there's the ash pond. So if you liken it to a house, you have a small kitchen, a large storeroom, and a very large toilet. And that's how the ash is transported. So that's the Buckingham Canal. It's supposed to be a national waterway. I think that Mr. Minister of Road Transport and Highways, Gadkari, has not visited this place, because this can be converted into a skating rink, not a national waterway at this point. This is again a sign that I saw 6 years ago. Since then we have defeated this proposal. This is a sign that says this land belongs to Kamarajar Port. There is no land there. So it is a statement of intent rather than a statement of fact. And then they started working to make that a reality. The fisher folk stepped in, and now that has been removed and it has been restored to this condition. But it's a very, very difficult fight for the fisher folk to fight alone. And it is actually a fight that we should be fighting, because if this place gets filled, we are finished. Next. So that's, along the same lines, there are more slides that say that we are in deep doo-doo, and we need to we need to be able to do something more than band-aid work. We cannot, I mean, for instance, I think that all of us do a lot of charity work, a lot of work to help people after they get harmed. Over here, we need to start figuring out how we can also put our hands and put our energy into preventing harm from happening. Thank you. I just created one song. So the Purambook is basically what do we do in order to move out of this? I think that it requires a changing of values. It is not as if the politicians are doing all these things. We together have a very perverted value system, and in this value system we have said that a water body is not as valuable as a road, a beach is not as valuable as a port, and, or an IT corridor. So until we say, do you want a port or a beach? If we say we want a beach, then we will be saved. What that means is, from now on, we need to figure out how we can prioritize and increase the value, that's a revalorize open spaces rather than built spaces. And perhaps if we are courageous enough to start unbuilding our cities.